What's up, everyone? You're listening to the What You Sippin' On podcast brought to you by B3 Business Bonding and Beer. I'm Eric Thornton. I'm a residential real estate agent here in Sumner County, joined by my good friend Dennis Tolpa, a residential home mortgage lender with Studio Bank, also here in Sumner County, and my good buddy William Stiles, local insurance agent, again, here in Sumner County. So if you are in the market for a new home, a mortgage, insurance, hit us up. We'd be happy to help you out and take good care of you. And we're also out to help connect our local business leaders here in the Nashville area, and we do that a couple different ways. One, through our B3, again, Business Bonding and Beer networking events, which we host at the Rudder once a month, where we give you the opportunity to connect in person with other local business leaders in the area. And, of course, we also host this podcast, What You Sippin' On, where we bring local business leaders straight to you no matter where you're listening. So that being said, we'd love it if you would like, subscribe, share, comment, all the good things to help us spread the word about what we're doing here. And, of course, we hope you'll watch social media for information on our events. Again, come out and see us. And also want to give a huge thanks to our man behind the camera, Brian Stiles. Brian Stiles, if you're out there listening somewhere, you just crept into my mind from my days at Parks Real Estate. But Brian Holloway with Black Fox Media. We're not going to cut bloopers today. We're just going to keep rolling. And now on with the show. We're joined today by Desneige VanCleve. She is the founder and executive director of Grace Place Ministries, again, here in Sumner County. If you're picking up a theme, we like to keep it local sometimes. Desneige, before we go any further, what you sipping on over there?
A nice, tasty black coffee.
Nice. You need a little pick-me-up this afternoon, or where's that come from?
And so when I knew what time we were going to be gathering, it's like, I'm going to need my afternoon coffee. Because they say that if you drink coffee 3 times a day, it'll make you live longer.
Really? I did not know that.
But I can't drink 3 coffees back to back. I drink 2 in the morning, and then you get 1 after lunch.
So it's 3 cups, not 3 like morning, lunch, and dinner. It's 3 cups total. Is that it?
I mean, it didn't really specify.
Okay.
I need to
I'm
write
just
that one
going with
down.
3 total.
I like it.
Yeah. I've been too focused on water lately. I need to work my coffee in there. Then some say wine helps you out too. So,
or hot chocolate. I mean, Eric chose hot chocolate
not a coffee
today,
guy.
so I mean, it still works out. Still caffeine.
not a coffee guy.
Yeah,
93
you're fine.
degrees, hot chocolate, perfect
that.
choice. I don't know what you have against that.
Another fun fact about coffee is that it was discovered, and you're going to have to check this story. It might be urban legend. Today's society is full of a bunch of fact checkers. I just worry about urban legends and old wives' tales going away permanently. So I'm going to keep this cycle going.
Keep it coming.
So I heard that coffee was discovered because a goat herder shared the plant with his goats and noticed that it makes them kind of like to dance.
Yeah, I think I heard that too.
Anyway,
Did you really?
it was like 800.
I think I heard something like that on a podcast one time, similar to ours, where they were just sharing old stories. So yeah, that's probably true.
Back from your
It was
goat
like
herding days in
800.
Bryson City.
It was like 800 AD.
You ever seen
That's how-
William dance? He dances like a goat.
Sometimes it just depends on what mood I'm in. That's how they got goat yoga, isn't it? They gave all the goats caffeine, and then they started doing yoga.
I mean, I don't really know. I just know that every time I drink coffee, I think of goats dancing, and so it just makes me very happy.
Well, this public service announcement brought to you by B3. You all learn something new every day here. So, well, Desneige, tell us a little bit about Grace Place. We know that you're in not just a leadership role there now, but you obviously have been very instrumental in getting it to where it is today. So we'd love just kind of a quick summary or a quick overview of what it is you all do over there.
Yeah, so Grace Place is a life recovery program for women and children in the community who are experiencing homelessness. And homelessness covers a lot of different types of life journeys. So we have women there who are in recovery from substance abuse. We have women there who have been a victim of domestic violence but are no longer in danger, and they're trying to put their life back together and build a new life. We have women who are just part of the cycle of generational poverty who end up at Grace Place. We have women who end up with an unexpected pregnancy and then all of a sudden need to work on becoming independent. So they're welcome at Grace Place. There's just so many different types of paths that our women have been on before they end up there. But the umbrella we serve under is homelessness.
So a couple things you mentioned there that a lot of people I think maybe have misconceptions about Grace Place is, one, you said domestic violence. They're not currently in the domestic violence situation when they come to Grace Place, right?
That's correct.
And then the other thing you said was substance abuse. But they've already had help with that before they come to Grace Place, right?
Right.
Okay.
So if a mother, we do we have a sober living community. We do expect our
Right.
mothers to be sober while they're with us. So
Right.
we do random drug tests and whatnot throughout the whole program, but they do one on intake as well to get into the program. And if that mother fails that drug test, then we would ask her to go to a 28-day rehab minimum to be able to come back.
So the
to
moms
Grace
that you
Place.
get are single mothers. They have to
Mhm.
be single mothers,
Yes.
and they're kind of getting back on their feet. What's that process look like? Just a short, condensed version of how long and what's in that process.
Our program usually takes anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half. A lot of times the journey has been very complex and the barriers are very complicated and take a long time to be able to overcome. So each mom is different. Each mom might come in with no transportation. She might come in with transportation. Well, those two things together are a difference of 12 weeks on whether she's going to be in our program 12 weeks, less or more. So with each different thing that we've identified, which are the major barriers we've identified are employment, childcare, transportation, and threatening debt and savings. So those different things that we want them to make sure they tackle while they're with us are each worth 12 to 16 weeks, depending on what the mother needs to tackle. So that's why we try to make sure that we are customized to each individual mother's journey. We make sure that we want to meet the needs and help that mother deal with the issues she's coming in with.
Mm.
How do they find out about Grace Place? Like, as they're coming through their issue, but their problem, like, how do they get to you?
Well, the answer to that is actually surprising even for me. Most of the women find us because they Google women and children shelter. And that's just really surprising to me. Right after that, it's going to be other help agencies who they contact. If they're not aware of Grace Place yet, they'll contact another agency for a sort of help that they might need. And then through the assessment or evaluation that agency does, the need for housing, the need for different types of things comes up. And so then that agency would refer them to us.
Mm.
Some referrals come from the churches too, our local churches.
What type of volunteer opportunities are there for people from the community to get involved?
All of our evening programs for our women and children are volunteer-led. So there are opportunities to be involved with our children and our mothers on a weekly basis. That is a weekly commitment. We have groups and members of the community, different businesses, service groups gather and bring us hot and ready meals on program nights. Regularly, there's a meal train that we keep on our website for people to sign up and do that. And then we have volunteers who come and fix things for us and change light bulbs. And so there are numerous ways that people can get involved.
So that's like a high level overview of Grace Place, and I want to dive into a little bit about why you chose Grace Place as your mission, because I feel like this is really your mission in life. But can you give us just some statistics about Grace Place as far as how many applications you get a year, your success rate? Because I know me living in Hendersonville as this little bubble, you really don't understand the impact that you guys have and the need for this in the community. So can you give us just some basic statistics for that?
Yes. Our mothers who complete the program right now, even 7 years in, and I just had to revisit all of our statistics last week because I make myself sit down and go over them, because we want to make sure that what we're saying is accurate and we want to make sure that the information we're giving is up to date. I feel very accountable to the community for those things. And we are still holding steady at 86% of our graduates have remained independent once
Wow,
they've
that's
graduated the
incredible.
program, which is just awesome. And that's just something that we're really, really grateful for. And who gets the credit for that? The moms. The moms get all the credit for that. The important details that people in the community might not understand are that we have capacity in our current building home for 12 to 15 families in a year because the program is long-term. And we have over 200 applications a year for our
200.
services. Yeah. So
Just Sumner County.
that would be Sumner, and we keep Robertson. There's some Davidson County applications too. But 2/3 of them at least would be Sumner County applicants.
Mm.
So how do you choose?
Well, Sumner County gets priority.
Okay.
And then after that, Robertson County
Okay.
gets priority because it's our neighbor county. And there just aren't resources in Robertson either. So the likelihood of us having to choose, though, with the amount of Sumner County families who are on our waiting list and needing is very slim.
It's something that really got me at the last luncheon, and I would love for you to talk about this whenever we are, getting to the end of the conversation here. But it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it takes $32 an hour for a single mom to really make it off any subsidies in the county. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. With the cost of rent now, and we actually take the time to call all of our local places. So if we're looking for an average on the cost of childcare, we're not going to give you some number that we found on some random website for the state of Tennessee that may or may not be accurate. We literally call the childcare agencies throughout Sumner County to put that number together. We do the same thing with the affordable housing options that are in Sumner. We know who those apartment complexes are that might have some restricted income apartments, and we ask what your waiting list is. So this is real data from right here when we say these things. And when we did the single mother, amount that she has to make per hour this year in this market with the cost of living, it was $32 an hour. And that's if she's paying for her own health insurance, her children's health insurance, no food assistance, no childcare vouchers, nothing. If she's just independent, completely independent, that is the wage she has to earn right now.
That's amazing. So
That's with one child.
Right. And
Just to be clear.
When moms come in, what's typical? How many children do they have? Do you see like a wide variety, or what does that look like?
Our average was 2 children per mother, except for the last 2 years. It's been odd. We have had so many mothers come through the program in the last 2 years with only one child, which is just it's just kind of an anomaly to me. I'm not really sure why, but so I'm going to still stick with the average of 2 because it's been so strange.
Yeah, that is weird. So do you have local businesses and companies that you work with when they're coming out of the program that will hire them? Are there companies that come to you to look for help?
We do. We have several employer partnerships throughout the community who will hire our mothers and pay them a wage that's a little bit more livable than if they were just going somewhere else trying to find employment. So it's really helpful because if we can make that connection quickly, then it increases their mobility through the program, which helps us serve more families. If employment doesn't take, 3 months to secure, that's always a good thing. And we do always encourage our mothers to wait for the right job opportunity. We have them search for jobs that are Monday through Friday during first shift because that's the only time that reliable childcare is available. And we have identified that as one of the things that has helped contribute to the state of homelessness is a lot of our mothers have been used to taking whatever job they could get, which a lot of them would be hospitality, retail, your quick hire, your quick start types of positions. And those are going to require evenings and weekends. So one of the things that's been part of the vicious cycle we've identified is mom is constantly relying on friends and family for childcare, and it's just not a sustainable way to live. You can't rely on friends and family to meet all of your childcare needs. And so mom has lost lots of jobs quickly because of that key thing. And so we just encourage them, look, wait for the right position. And so it can take a longer amount of time if you don't have employer partnerships. So.
I know for me, having 2 kids in childcare was worse than having a mortgage. I mean, it was just astronomical.
It's awful.
You got kids, and are they in daycare or just?
No, my wife works at a daycare.
Oh, okay.
So they go with her.
Yeah, but for families that don't have sustainable income, there's no way you could. Even churches that are a little bit cheaper, it's just not affordable.
No.
So, okay, so that's kind of the statistics of the town. So tell us about you. So I'd like to know a little bit more about your background, where you started. I know your husband really well because he's from a similar hometown to me as me in North Carolina. But tell us a little bit about you and your background starting out.
Well, my name is Desneige VanCleve. I'm from a small town.
Was born on a cold winter night.
As far as where I start out, do you mean like where what I
what's your
intended to do
education?
with my
Where'd you
life?
start going? Yeah.
Yes. So when I first went to college, it was to be a high school English teacher with the goal of only teaching high school level until I would have my doctorate and I could teach college level. That's what I wanted to do.
What college is this? Is it in Tennessee or no?
The first university I went to is called Mansfield University in my hometown.
Which is?
Mansfield.
Great question.
Great
I'm always
question.
good for one of those.
So I went to school to be a teacher, and eventually I wanted to be a professor because I loved literature and I loved the kind of discussion and thought you can put into literature, and I love how much literature can teach you about history. And so I just was really, really passionate about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met my husband.
Right.
And
Who is a very interesting guy just on his own. He's been very successful in the music industry
right.
for many years, 10, 20, 30 years, something like that.
In fact, it's how we met. He was my favorite fiddle player. So my
Really?
favorite band, well, he was the fiddle player in my favorite band. I'm not going to give him that much credit.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that mean you were or still am a groupie then?
I was very much so a groupie.
There it is.
Self-proclaimed.
Yeah, that's
Very
awesome.
much so. And he actually saw me from his tour bus before I even knew the band was there. He was checking me out.
Mm-hmm. Now this is bluegrass / gospel music. So
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
It was at a bluegrass festival called Gray Fox
Yeah.
in New York State. And I'd been several times and just loved it. I love the festival atmosphere.
Yeah.
Wasn't really a hippie because I couldn't do a lot of what hippies are okay with. But including I need to, shave my armpits and things of that nature. But I absolutely love the culture of music and camping and just relaxing.
And because
that
he's
atmosphere.
successful in the music industry, he brings you to Nashville.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how does that get you into Grace Place? Where did that come from?
Well, that is a very long, lifelong story. Grace Place came into my world, my awareness, the need for it, because I was working at Long Hollow Baptist Church as the benevolence
Which is one of the
coordinator.
biggest churches in Hendersonville.
Right. And I was just overseeing the benevolence ministry, which was mostly volunteer run. So we had a committee of volunteers and I would train them. But the first screening phone calls that we would take from people in crisis in the community went through me. And then I would assign them to a volunteer. So I just, through that position, was really, really, really surprised at the number of moms who would call in urgent need of a place to live. They were either in their car, some of them were at, hotels that churches had paid for, and they
Same
needed to
calls
leave.
you get today, basically.
Right, right. But my first response was, well, let me go figure out where I can tell these moms to go when they call, because I don't have an answer for this. And so I went and tried to look for resources and quickly discovered there weren't any that would be helpful long term. And so it's just kind of this dream that the Lord started putting on my heart. And then an important part of that journey was me coming to terms with a lot of things that I had experienced in my upbringing that had kind of put a chip on my shoulder. I grew up in very impoverished childhood, had experienced just the horrible effects of a very bitter and hostile divorce between my parents, and lived most of my childhood in and out of homelessness. And so there were things that I learned as a child that I took very, very seriously and made choices that were good, and I was successful, and I poured my heart into being a very good student and was the leader of every club you can imagine if I was involved in it. And I just took making sure that I lived my life in a way that would ensure that I would have a different life than I had already experienced as a child very, very seriously. So
Can I ask you a question there quick?
Yeah.
So when you make that decision, because some people go the other way,
Right.
and they fall into a hole. So what was there something there that made you want to go in the right direction instead of falling in a hole, which you very easily could have done?
Honestly, even with all the things that happened living with my father until he left, he left when I was 14, just left. But it's so curious. He taught me really good values in the midst of it. He really did. So one of the things that he told me was, one, my dad talked to me about purity as a little girl. That was a big thing that he talked to me about. And I thank God for that to this day, because I see how uncomfortable that conversation is for a lot of men and their daughters. And I'm sitting here going, that saved my life in a lot of ways that he was willing to talk to me about that. And then the other thing that he always talked to me about was education. He could not speak higher enough about how important education was going to be for me to live the kind of life I wanted. And my dad also was very, very supportive about me being a woman and doing whatever I wanted to do in life. He was super old-fashioned. I mean, he's in his late 70s now, but when he was raising me as a child, he had very forward-thinking views on women and taught me that to never let that be something that stopped me. So those three things had a huge impact on why I was able to stay focused on the things that I knew I needed to do to be able to live differently.
So do you feel like you apply a lot of what you went through in those struggles to what brought you to that mission that is Grace Place today?
Oh, yeah, let's circle back to that because I got off track, didn't I?
It was my fault. Sorry.
Good question.
That was a good question.
It was a great question. It was a good question. I will say too, I also grew up in a community that was small enough to be really, really caring, but also small enough to turn the other way when they probably felt like they needed to. And so I had people in my life that believed in me so much. Teachers, coaches, caregivers, people that were in my life that really did believe in me and really did build me up. And that's a key thing. For our children who struggle with hard things, all it takes is one adult who believes in them throughout their entire upbringing to make the difference on whether that child grows up with resilience or not.
Do you remember who that one person was for you?
The first one was a lady, her name is Mindy Kale, and I still stay in touch with her because she was one caregiver that we had for a time frame during the worst parts of the divorce. It was really, really early in my life, and she just loved me, and I was her favorite, and I knew it. And everybody, for kids, man, knowing you're somebody's favorite, that's just a big deal. So, and she was a very calm woman, a very loving woman, had such a nurturing way about her. She cooked really good, and I spent a lot of my time as a child starved, truly starved, and I ate it. My brother and I have eaten out of dumpsters before just to survive. So, she had a big impact on me.
That's awesome.
So cool.
But fast forward to Grace Place, when I felt the Lord calling me to do this kind of work, my first reaction was, "You are funny." So I had to go. Fortunately, it only took 6 months. With me, it can take a lot longer, unfortunately, to learn hard things. But in that period of time, I feel like it was a very deeply spiritual, very deeply intimate time that I spent with the Lord, while he had to really kind of gut me about the ways that I had built myself up, because I would have been the most judgmental person ever of one of these moms, because I had made choices that got me out of that, and I had risen above it. And so I just ended up with this giant chip on my shoulder that prevented me from being able to fully receive what God wanted for me to do with my life. And so I had about 6 months of him just...
And you're still at Long Haul Baptist. What's the year of this? Like 7, 8
So
years
this
ago?
would have been 2013 is when that started. It was also...
Going back to Dennis' point, like, that's exactly right. I mean, Dennis said you could have went the other way. You could have been like, hey, I did this. Why
Right.
can't you pull yourself up by your
I know,
bootstraps
right,
and do it?
yes.
I did it.
Yes.
But you took the opposite approach. Why?
Because God wouldn't let me do anything different. And I really do. When I say I didn't choose this, I do truly believe at my core that this was going to happen and that I was going to do this, but the Lord had to humble me. And so that's what that deeply intimate, painful time of my life was. It was me coming to terms with it, because he was like, basically, how dare you try to take credit and turn your nose up to other people, or look down your nose at other people who are in these situations. And it was just so clear all of a sudden, just in my soul, he's the one who even gave me intelligence enough to be able to know whether education was truly going to be a route I could take advantage of. You know what I mean? So just all this grace that he poured on me, and just how I'm made, and the people he put in my life, I was just taking credit for a lot of things that I did not deserve to take credit for.
Was that a hindsight thing where you just got to the point you're like, okay, that's what's been standing between me and this mission that, God wants me to pursue? Or was it like somewhere in there 3 months in, you realize like, okay, it's my own judgment, my own, like whatever that word is. And you're like, okay, now I got to start working on this in myself to get there. You know what I mean? Like, how does that come about where you realize that was the barrier?
I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and.
Awesome. Okay.
I knew the moment like that my heart experienced full repentance before him about it. Like that was a moment in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I have been so wrong and I have taken for granted so much of what the Lord has done for me. So there was that moment, and it was in probably that 3 or 4 month window of time. So then I just was like, okay. And it was like this full surrender that happened. And I was like, well, you're going to have to work some really big miracles now, because like I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I don't know anybody. I'm actually, you guys are going to laugh when I say this, but I am more introverted.
I don't believe it for a minute.
As far as my energy and
right.
what energizes me.
No,
right.
That.
I know. And so I had just kind of kept to myself for a long time. Even in my church, I was actively serving, but I wasn't like getting to know other adults. I was teaching kids and serving in that capacity at church. So like, I just didn't know a lot of people at all. And I'm like, what are you doing? I don't even know where to start. And so I said, you're going to have, I'm bargaining with God, giving him all my orders, right? Not much has changed. I'm just going to be honest. And I hope he's still laughing at me, but sometimes I wonder if I've just got a really big butt kicking coming when I finally do take my last breath here. But so I asked for billboards. I said, all right, we'll do this, but I need billboards. And so, one of the very first conversations that I had about Grace Place was with a man named Eddie Phillips. And he was just a volunteer for the benevolence committee, but he literally asked me in a conversation one day, after all this has happened in between me and the Lord, he asked me, what are going to be some of the hardest cases that we deal with in the benevolence ministry? And I was like, oh, it'll be the single moms for sure who call and they're homeless and you can hear their kids in the background and they're crying. And it's just, one of those things that's super, super sad. It's really hard. And I kid you not, he turned around and he goes, have you thought about what you want to do about that? So one of the sweet things about Jesus, and I'm sorry, this might not be a faith-based podcast, but my whole life is faith-based.
It's all good.
You chose me
rolling.
today.
You're doing great.
Keep it rolling.
One of the kindest things that I can say about the Lord throughout this whole journey is that every time I have been so small, and every time like I have been in a place where I had so little faith that I asked for things like billboard because I couldn't take that next step, he was kind enough to reach into my life and give me a billboard. And that's what's so sweet about him and how he moves and how he works, because he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do that, but he does because he is just so kind. So that's how Grace Place got started. Eddie Phillips actually had already helped found a couple of other organizations. He had actually been on board of directors as they've started nonprofits, so he just had a wealth of knowledge. He also is an extremely, incredibly generous man. He ended up buying the property that we're at right now and leasing it to us to help us get started. And he leases it to us for $1 a year.
Wow.
And I owe him about
awesome.
$5,
What a
I'm pretty
blessing.
sure.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, what a blessing. So this was on your heart and mind for several months after you were there at the church, and the Lord spoke with you, and you decided that you were going to grab this. You said you were an introvert. Now, that's very interesting, because when I see you as a hell of a good fundraiser and someone who gets out there in the community better than anybody I know. So how did that change? Did you just look yourself in the mirror one day and say, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to change my mindset on this?
So I am in a constant battle with the fact that I do not get energy from being around other people, but I absolutely love it. I love people. So it hasn't been this huge obstacle for me to make that shift. I love Grace Place so much, and I believe in it so much, and I love what I do so much that it's very easy for me to make sure that I'm doing the absolute best I can to make sure I raise awareness and that I'm having conversations whenever possible. And I love the nonprofit sector, so I love being at all the other events for nonprofits because we have so many wonderful nonprofits in our community that I just love. So that part, it's not hard. It's not hard. What's hard is that I get to a place where I'm like, I can't talk or see another human being again for at least a good 48 hours. And I do it to myself because I just hit a wall.
Well, it helps that your faith is in the right place, and you're following His plan. I mean, I think just knowing you well enough that's what I think is so cool about this, because you've realized that despite as talented as you are and all the true things that William's saying and how much the community has embraced, not just Grace Place, but you, like, the Lord's got the right person in charge of this. Like, it was no mistake that He picked you to lead this effort. So I'm sure that, you wake up every day and there's a certain amount of trust that goes into that, right? Like, bring me to the right people, bring the right people to me, give me the right talent, give me the right words. Like, I've heard you speak enough to know that relatively certainly that's at least part of kind of your, like, how you roll, for lack of a better word.
It is. And I offend myself now when I have doubts. Like, the amount of miracles that He has lined up for so long, the things that He has accomplished at Grace Place, the provision, I have no reason in the world to doubt Him for a second. And so, yeah, it is day to day. And then, I start my day out that way. I start my day out in Scripture and in prayer every single day because I have just a very intimate knowledge of the fact that as a wife, a mother, humongous responsibility in those two roles, then also Grace Place and the mission that He has given me with Grace Place, and the fact that it's more mothers and children, and it's serious. It's an intersection of their life that can make or break, and how we handle that. It's just a lot of responsibility, and I know better than to take a foot outside of my house before I have met with Him and focused on Him.
Well, you're the mother of your children, but to think about it, you're really the mother of 5 families at any given time and their children, right?
I get the sentiment behind that, but these women aren't my peers. I don't treat them like they're my children.
Let's talk about your staff for a minute,
Right.
because I have staff. I know a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners out there have staff, but speaking to someone who is as driven as you treat this like a business, and you have a phenomenal staff. How do you keep them motivated on a day-to-day basis?
Well, one of the big things is I encourage self-care in them, and I encourage them to build that into their work flow and routine. I think that if they're taking care of themselves, it can only benefit our families and Grace Place more. So I'm not the kind of boss that is like, oh, you on your phone at work, or, you took too long of a lunch. Like, I encourage, hey, if you can go be part of a Bible study and it's during your workday, I'm totally fine with that. Matter of fact, go do it. Because I want them to know that they have my full support, first of all, because the work is really, really hard. It is some of the most beautiful, rewarding work you can even fathom, at the exact same time as it being some of the most heartbreaking work and just gut-wrenching at the exact same time. So I want my staff to know that they have my support in that. What was the other part of your question?
You're very organized. Like, everything, when you go into your office, everything is very organized, very laid out. Is that something that you did yourself? Did you design that, or did you bring other people in to help you organize the systems and the processes you have in place?
I don't know necessarily that I had anybody else come in and help. The program has been developed over time through trial and error, and I feel a very high level of accountability towards our donors and our supporters, and even just the other agencies that we partner with, to make sure that we're paying attention to what's working, what's not. I think one of the great things about being a millennial, the older side of the millennial generation, is that we are very statistic driven. We like good stories that make us feel good, but not at the expense of proven results. And I think that analytical mind towards everything that we're doing at Grace Place and our systems and processes and addressing it with, you better have the data to back up what you're saying and what you're doing. And if you don't, things need to change, and you need to make those changes and be willing to do that. So everything that we're doing there, from the program with the moms, yes, there is a system, there is a process. It is run like a business because it has to be. It really does. If it's going to be the best thing for the moms and it's going to be the best thing for the community, and we're going to balance all of that together and create this great, beautiful synergy, it has to be a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't get to 86%.
Right.
Yeah, success
Right.
rate. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you're probably one of the few nonprofits that, you know, have $1 million gross every year. I mean, very successful nonprofit, right? And
Yes.
you've done this. Of course, you have a team behind you, and I'm on the board, so I'm biased. But it is something that you've worked really, really hard toward, and tremendous success to you. How many people were at the last luncheon?
1,000.
1,000 people,
Mhm.
packed room.
How many people cried at the last luncheon?
1,000.
Probably
1,000.
Probably 1,000.
1,000.
Incredible testimony. mean,
I had
that-
one guy at my table stand up and clap at the end and say, "Well, thanks, William, for a crying lunch. Appreciate it." So,
Everybody cries when they have lunch with you, though.
well, you know, it's just, I get that.
Not that particular day. It was that moving that day. So if y'all ever get a chance to go to the Grace Place luncheon, absolutely take the opportunity and do that. What's next for Grace Place?
Well,
I feel like there's some
in the
some
immediate
cool things.
future, July 26th, we'll get our final reading before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for our new land that we have under contract. And as we already talked about, we have a huge number of applications each year for what we do. So we are going to build 48 apartments and our own childcare facility
That is so
All
incredible.
right.
on our new campus.
That's awesome.
Yes. And so we're going to triple the current crisis to stability program that we run right now. The capacity for that will triple. And then with the remaining 36 units that we'll have, we're going to be able to open that up to single mothers in the community who are in a certain income threshold to be able to come there and live there for 2 to 4 years, paying 30% of their income towards a program fee. But they'll be able to work on homeownership, a trade, or a college degree while they're there. And that is the end goal. That's always been the ultimate vision, is to have a transitional place where mothers can leave when they graduate with an asset, because that's what's going to truly change that generational cycle of poverty. So we're really, really excited.
That's
And
awesome.
in just 7 years that the community has just absolutely rallied behind it, and everybody's excited. It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's a humongous vision.
That's a long way from God, you're hilarious, to to those plans and that
Right.
impact in the community.
Right. Yeah. And I can say now, yeah, well, I could say it before we even opened originally back in 2015. I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. I cannot even fathom doing something else. So
That's awesome.
Mm.
So speaking of your life, obviously we know you're married. You mentioned kids. How many kids do you have? What do you do on your free time? Tell us a little bit on
3.
that. 3 kids.
I have 3 children.
Okay.
My daughter is 15. So life is very interesting. And then I have a 13-year-old son. He'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. And then a 10-year-old boy.
Okay. So your evenings and weekends are jam-packed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it hard to manage? I'm gonna say yes, it is. But I mean, what you're doing there and raising a family, I mean, it's a lot to take on that a lot of people deal with. I mean, what do you do outside of going in a hole for 48 hours to kind of regroup, to kind of get through life?
I am very, very disciplined. Again, I'll say it 100 times about self-care. I have a rhythm of life that I do not compromise on, and that is getting up, getting in the Word, prayer. Then I go and do my workouts, because that is what's good for me. It's what gives my brain better focus, and it's just my overall health, my energy levels. And then I go to work, and then when I'm home with my kids, but I'm also super disciplined about sleep. I make myself go to bed at a decent time. I get a good night's sleep every night. You can do more if you are disciplined about it, about the things that you're doing in life. If you are disciplined about them, you can accomplish way more than if you're not. and I do strongly feel that way. I'm very opinionated about being disciplined in your routines and in your structure and in your schedule. So I would say that different parts of raising our kids have been more exhausting and less exhausting. It's just the different seasons that you go through. I don't feel like at the end of the day, I always feel like at the end of the day that I have had an invigorating experience. I don't go home or sit around on the weekends feeling like I've been hit by a truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do feel like it's because I am very, very, very disciplined about the rhythm that I keep in life.
Yeah.
And I say no to a lot. You don't get a yes from me unless it's with 10 exclamation points. That's just a rule of life.
Much like accepting the invitation of this podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't I guess. I don't do those kinds of yeses. That's another discipline in life.
Well, we are thrilled that you said yes. Even
Well,
one
thank you.
exclamation mark would have been fine, but the 10 was great. We
It helps that you're all my friends.
And we do have to say that as part of our, what we do with B3 Business Bonding and Beer is each quarter we pick a nonprofit that we want to support. So Grace Place is our nonprofit this quarter. So if anybody is interested in getting behind Desneige and her vision at Grace Place and what they're accomplishing in the community, feel free to hit us up. We'd love to direct you to those resources.
Before we roll out here, where can people find you? Where can people find Grace Place before I get into the speed questions?
Well, they can visit our website, which is graceplaceministryinc.org. Or you can just Google Grace Place Ministry Hendersonville. You'll find us that way too.
Okay, Instagram, social media, anything like that? Or
Yes,
is it
we are on Instagram, social media, Facebook. We recently started a TikTok. I think we've gotten one video up there. I did hire a development manager though, so there's going to be a lot more of that kind of stuff.
So we're going to see a lot more of Dee dancing. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, maybe.
I think that's a great idea around the
I don't
office.
know. I feel like I should charge for that kind of material.
Okay, and then what's the best way for people to go and donate just to the website?
Yes. Virtually every single page of our website has a giant donate button on it. So
Okay.
you cannot miss the opportunity to donate.
Well, you heard it here, folks. You got to go to the website and click on the giant red button to donate. All right, let's do some speed questions. Are you ready?
Speed questions?
You've got this. Look, you already got your coffee. Take another sip. Here we go.
Okay.
Where is your happy place?
The woods.
Wow, that was very speedy. Good for you. Okay. What would you be doing if you're not doing this? But you already alluded that you would be doing this for sure, but if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I would be talking college kids' heads off about literature. They would be bored to death, but
Yeah.
I know, it's so weird.
Did you have a favorite poet or author?
No, not really, actually.
Just all
I
of them?
loved so many of them.
Who is someone that you look up to, hero or a person or alive or dead? Someone you look up to?
Well, the number one is my husband. You can just imagine how hard his life has been since meeting me. I'm just kidding. But truly, I mean, I just really, the kind of person that he is, and, it is hard to be married to me. Like yesterday, I'm gone till 8:30 at night doing leadership Sumner interviews last night. I get home and he has cooked, taken care of everything, cleaned up everything in the kitchen, and I just get to come home and chill, go to bed. And I walk in the bedroom. He hadn't made the bed.
Oh, what a slacker.
He was
Oh,
the last one out of
man.
it. He was the last one out of it. And I was like, I cannot believe. I was almost going to text him, you were the last one out of bed. And then I was like, Desneige, stop. Because I had just walked through my house and was like, oh my gosh, he's so amazing. I have the best husband ever because I had nothing I needed to do.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go in and nitpick over the stupid bed. But I stopped myself. And then I told him that was my thought process and made fun of myself. So hopefully. But yeah, he is such a great father, great husband. He comes from a very difficult upbringing as well. And so we've both had things we've had to flesh out together in our marriage. But I look up to my
The
husband.
next question is, what is your most impactful book or podcast? And one that you could give him is Why It's Important to Make Your Bed First Thing in the Morning. That's a good book. But is there an impactful book or podcast that you've listened to?
So I listen to the Bible Recap podcast every day after my reading. So that's number one. I love, love, love John Piper as a theologian. So I have his podcast as well that I listen to. As far as a book, I just finished reading Dane Ortland's Gentle and Lowly a while back, and that was a really, really good book. So
Gentle and lonely.
Gentle and Lowly
Lovely. Okay.
is about Jesus.
Got you. All right. Last question. What would your superpower be?
It is not easy to shake me.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't necessarily struggle with fear at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the older I get and the more I interact just with people or other leaders in general, I see a lot of like self-limiting fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do consider that something that is a gift or a superpower that's been given to me that I'm really grateful for.
That's interesting. Being on the board with Desneige, I have a lot of fear. So it's nice that you are opposite of that.
I didn't say I don't create fear. I said I don't really feel
I
it
have
a lot.
an immense pleasure being on the board with Dee, and Grace Place is very, it's on my heart a lot. So I'm glad that you were able to be here. I really appreciate it. So with that, we're going to say thank you to everybody for visiting with us today, and thank you for listening. Thank you, Dee, for being here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, as always, to Brian Holloway in the back producing Black Fox Media. Thanks to B3. And with that, we will see you guys next time. Cheers.
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 Cheers.